Hey, welcome to Integrative Preparedness. I'm Steve Smith. How are you all today? It's good to have you. First off, welcome to all the new people. We have a lot of new subscribers out there, both on YouTube and patrons over on Patreon, and it's good to see you all here. Today I'm going to talk about military training, but not maybe the way that you think I'm going to go about it. Matter of fact, it's going to be in response to a question that one of our patrons on Patreon asked. A couple of things that maybe I should tell all the new people, because we have so many new folks dropping by and joining up, just to kind of help you understand the channel. I tend to talk slow sometimes. I think about a lot as I talk. I often have about 100 thoughts going through my head at the same time, and then I've got to decide which one of those things that I want to include in here. I don't write stuff out. I address a subject that I know about and have experience in, and then I want to share with the people out there. So if you need somebody yelling and screaming at you about what you need to do and how horrible things are going to be, this might not be the channel for you. I do talk about how horrible things might get and what you need to do, but I do it in my own way, and sometimes that's a little bit slower than some people need. Also, sometimes I take a while to get to the point, but I always get to the point, and there is always a point. And it's usually the last few minutes of the video that that I wrap it all up. And if you haven't quite understood what I'm leading up to, you certainly do then. Maybe that's the preacher in me. I don't know, but you know how when you go to church and the preacher's up there and he's telling these stories, and and first he makes the announcements, which is kind of what I'm doing here, right? And then he's telling the story and he's leading up, and you're going, okay, all right, I mean, this is a nice story, but where is this going? Then all of a sudden at the end, he wraps it all up in that package that makes you go, oh, yeah, good message. Well, that's kind of the way that I try to do it here. So if that's all right with you, then stick around, because I think you'll enjoy it. And if that's not, no hard feelings, because there's plenty of other people out there that'll yell and scream at you. and not to say that some of them don't have good information. Some of them do. We just each do it in our own way. And if you're not familiar with me, I am the one who wrote the Stonemont series, the books, the Reversion, the Revival, the Renewal, An Appeal to Heaven, and the Blessings of Freedom. The Stonemont series, which gives you an in-depth, detailed plan within a novel about great people and bad people and good things and bad things, but that covers completely how to prepare for, how to survive, and how to rebuild after a total collapse. And it's the rebuilding that's the important part, because as I have the character Jim Wyatt say in one of these books, if it all falls apart, I don't want to notice. That is our goal in integrative preparedness. So with all that out of the way, and the way that you can get there, I'm not much of a salesman. The way you can order those, I put all the links down here. They're available on Amazon in both paperback and Kindle, and they're also available from me. Autographed, if you would like that. There's a way to do that. And hey, all of you folks have been asking about the t-shirts. Yeah, I've already put a little bit of information up there. I'm not going to spend the time on this one to talk about it, but yeah, you can start ordering both the Integrative Preparedness or the Stonemont t-shirts, and we've got several different designs on there, and they're pretty cool. And I've been wearing them around a little bit myself. So let me get to the question at hand here and how it applies to you, military training. This, as I said, is in response to one of our patrons over there. If you're not with us on Patreon, I would suggest you do. There's just a lot more over there that can help you out and that you might enjoy. Only cost you $1. Ian, I believe, is one that sent this in. I should have gone back and looked, but let's just say it was Ian, because I think it was. Ian, with a name like Ian, surely you're Irish, aren't you, lad? Okay. He asked, where did the Irish Republican Army, the IRA, get their military training? Now, if you're new to me, you might say, well, who is this guy and why would he know that? Well, I kind of explained some of that on Patreon. I just know, I know that. That's a great question. There's a couple of things at work here. And first off, a lot of people aren't familiar with the IRA, or they've been told they're a bunch of you-know-whats. I'm not going to use the T word here because that just sends off flags. Most of the world, because of the press, the mainstream press, filtered through the British government and then through the American government, thinks of them as a bunch of T's, and really what they were like the people who won our freedom for here, in our country, those who fought against British occupation, and they were called T's, right? George Washington was a T, and Patrick Henry, and Thomas Jefferson, Paul Revere, all of them T's. You know what I mean by that. Well, I'll give you the short story. The IRA, not your retirement fund, but the Irish Republican Armies, came out of the Irish War for Independence, and after that, the Irish Civil War. And I'm not going to go into long, detailed explanation of this, but the Irish War of Independence resulted in a split, okay, much like some people are calling for in our country here, which resulted in the Republic of Ireland, as a result of a treaty, resulted in the Republic of Ireland being, they called it the Free State, and segmented off from the north were 6 of the 9 counties of Ulster that Great Britain retained, and called it Northern Ireland. The Irish Republican Army was the army that fought against British occupation in the Irish War of Independence. Now, when the treaty came about, some agreed with it. They became the Army of the Republic of Ireland, and some disagreed with it, and they continued to be the Irish Republican Army, which kept fighting against, because they thought, well, we want to throw the Brits completely out of the country. Ireland is the entire island. It's not some of it, and you keep some of it, and you keep the indigenous Catholic population or the Republican population under a false oppression in the north. That gets a little deep here. Well, anyway, the Irish, a lot of these guys came out of military service in that, and some of them occasionally had fought in the British military as well. But their roots were in that war for Irish independence. Throughout the years, and until about 1968, 1969, when things really started to explode in the north of Ireland and all over Ireland, that's when the IRA started re-emerging as a military force. Now, what had up to that time been referred to as the old IRA. There was a split there between them and then what became known as the Provisional IRA, which is what most people think of as the IRA. I know I'm telling a story here, but remember what I said. It's the story's going to lead up to the point at the end, right? And you'll be glad you waited, hopefully. And if you weren't, then don't watch me again and go watch somebody else. So the IRA, the Provos, the Provisionals, they're the ones who were the main party now fighting against, and became a military campaign against British occupation of the north of Ireland, what many people call Northern Ireland. There were a couple of splits there that One was Continuity IRA, and another was the Real IRA. They called themselves that because they didn't think that the Provos, or the Provisional IRA, were going far enough in their military campaigns. There were also other split-off groups, the INLA, National Liberation Army. I know people in all these groups, which is why I know about this stuff. But where they got there, and they were very effective, that's the point. They were very effective with what many people might call guerrilla warfare. They were, now some of these splits had Marxist leanings, which I in no way agree with, and I've told them personally I don't agree with their political thoughts. It's all right. I mean, they didn't kneecap me or anything, right? But they were very effective in their military campaigns against British occupation. So where did they get all this? Because they didn't have, training camps since the 1920s of the Big Split throughout. Well, it came from understanding the world and developing ways to deal with the world they found themselves in. I've had a lot of people ask me, where do I get military training if I don't want to join the military? Well, and I've had a lot of guys I was not in the military myself. I never felt that I wanted to be real honest, for a number of reasons. I'm going to cover that someday over on Patreon. But I've had a number of military guys come to me for different kinds of training, mainly combatives trainings, but some others as well. Now that brings up a point. Why would they do that? Well, think about this. Most of the skills in the military are not developed by the military. See, they're developed outside the military, and then the military, like it needs to do, they institutionalize them, and they organize them, and then they write manuals about them and things like, so that they can train a large number of people in the basics or the advanced techniques of whatever it is they're trying to teach. I also often say that the Army has a manual for taking a crap in a sandstorm. I don't know if they do or not, but it wouldn't surprise me a bit. I'm just saying that whatever it is, the military has brought it down to its most basic teaching elements, so as they can teach this, into an accepting mind, a trainable person, so that they can reach a certain level of operational ability. However, the thing is that most of these skills don't come from the military itself. The cooks in the Army didn't, the Army didn't invent cooking, They institutionalized the concept of cooking. The military didn't invent gunfighting. They institutionalized it and trained it. They didn't invent guerrilla warfare, but they looked at it. They in some ways improved it. And I'll say in this sometimes, a lot of people mistakenly look at military training as the utmost training, or police training, or SWAT training, or whatever like this. They have a tendency to look, because ever since 9/11, the military and law enforcement have again been elevated. And, it's taken a hit now, certainly. I mean, in the last 5 years or so. But there for a while, everybody that put on a uniform was a hero, and so people had this idea that military was it. That's why you got so many people dressed up, trying to look military all over the place with patches on their caps and that. I mean, if you were in a unit and you have those patches on your cap, no problem. But people who were never in it and they're trying to dress like they were, that's where that all comes from. But the thing is, the important thing is, these skills did not come from the military. They were not invented by the military. They were, again, organized and structured by a military so as to be able to train a large group of people to be able to do it. Very seldom is the military on the cutting edge of whatever it is they're doing. Doesn't mean they're not very good at it. I have a lot of friends in the special operations community, and these guys are just exceptional people. But they'll be the first to tell you that, you know, they learn a lot of their stuff from non-military people coming in and teaching either their particular unit or they know that these came from outside the military. So all I'm saying there is don't assume that you have to have military background or training in order to be able to develop those skills and abilities that you need in a military environment. And in some ways, and those of you you guys who were with military backgrounds, and especially the more specialized you get, I think you'll agree with me more. And I say that because that's what I've been told by my friends who were in the special operations, either current or retired. The more you will run into resistance if you come up with something new, right? It's the same in law enforcement. I mean, you're dealing with an institutionalized culture. And, you know, the old, this is the way we've done it, so this is the way we're going to do it, you know, reigns supreme. And you try to introduce something better that you have developed as a result of your own experience, and you're going to run into roadblock after roadblock. I mean, look back, those of you who are familiar with Charlie Beckwith, if you know who he was, you know, he tried for a long time to get the Army to develop an organization that became Delta. And you know, he went through the SAS training and all that and tried to bring back, you know, the ideas. And of course now Delta is, and I'm familiar with that, now they're thought of as the preeminent, you know, unit of its type in the world. You know, some would argue that it doesn't matter. I mean, people have different opinions. They're certainly, you know, right there. But you know, he ran into a lot of resistance. You just look at the different stances that people have gone through over the years. I mean, you know, what was the, you know, I learned to shoot an entirely different way than the Weaver, and then what was the isosceles came about, and that was the only way to do it. And was it the modified Weaver or was the modified isosceles? I don't even remember because I don't care. It's just it's interesting how when something finally breaks into it, well, that's the situation or the technique or the tactic du jour, and if you question it, I mean, you don't know what you're talking about, right? There's a great lesson in there. The IRA developed their abilities in response to the situations they were dealing with, in situations and under the impression under which they were living. And they saw the tactics and the techniques used by the British military, or at that time, a lot of times. Sometimes it was the military, and then it was the RUC, the Royal Ulster Constabulary, and then later on it became the PSNI, the Police Service of Northern Ireland. It doesn't matter. It's the security services that were, you know, were tasked with enforcing laws that essentially oppressed the people. And simply by looking at these and studying them, they developed ways to fight against them. Now, one of the things that made them successful, so successful that they fought the SAS to a standstill. There were places, and I've been told this by British troops themselves, there were places they would not go into without air cover, and sometimes didn't even want to go in with it. The IRA was exceptional not only in military tactics, but in intelligence. And that is an area that so many people don't understand. the importance of Lee, who has Cold War prepper. He's a retired MI, and he'll maybe Lee make a statement on here. Hopefully he'll leave a comment on here. By the way, he's done an exceptional series of reviews on my books. They're up through, I think, the fourth book, and he does those on the final Thursday of each month. I'm not sure. Go check his channel, not just to see his review of mine, but he has great information, and it's Cold War Prepper. But Lee will tell you the importance of intelligence, and I had a little smattering of intelligence myself, and there is nothing that is more foundational than intelligence, of understanding your own capabilities, of understanding the tactics, techniques, strategies, and capabilities of your enemy. Was it Sun Tzu or was it George Washington? I don't know. One of them said, in all things, use spies. That's right. And that's what the IRA was so good at. They developed information within the security services, and alongside that, their ability to restrict information outflow, their ability to keep the enemy from knowing about them was excellent. One of the reasons that it was. Now there were occasional informants. Okay. And those happen for a variety of reasons. That brings me to something I've heard, that the military will teach, that there are 4 reasons that people will inform. See, that's a good, and I'm not going to hammer that, 4 or 5, something like that. But if you're a person who has dealt a lot with informants, you'll know that there's 5,000. Now, each of those can probably be made to be jammed under one of those columns of 4 or 5. I forget how much they say. But here again is when you're really involved in something, you understand the myriad of nuances that go on. It's a complicated situation. It's not simple. It's not, but they have to make it simple so they can teach it. And then after somebody gets further immersed in it, then they can start understanding some of the nuances. But places like organizations like the IRA, they just knew that because they've grown up in it. And sometimes when we would look at formal military training manuals, or how people taught, we just laugh, like, gee, man, but they had the support of the population, most of the population, and these were people who had been immersed in the cause for generations. I mean, generations, and they knew what had happened. They knew why they were fighting. And they believed in their cause, and they knew how it went back, as I referred to in one that I did just for Patreon the other day, how it went back 800 years, and they could explain it to you. How many Americans can do that? We have a lot of people out there thumping their chests and talking about freedom and liberty and stuff like that, but how many of them can really, really explain, the evolution of what's happened with our country, and why they should have those feelings, and how it compares to the original feelings of our first independence. So anyway, they didn't get my point. See, now we're getting to the point. My point is that it's not necessary they didn't get their training from the military. They got their training by intelligently responding to the situation they were in, and developing effective ways to deal with it. And you know what you need for that? Basically, you need intelligence, the ability to think tactically and strategically, and imagination. Imagination is the thing. Was it Einstein who said imagination is more important than intelligence? Well, you see, imagination is what is so often lacking in the military and police. So that's where I went round and round with a lot of the people higher up, I think, because they couldn't understand because they were still trying to do it by the book. They had no idea. That's why a guerrilla force can be very effective against a traditional force, and that's why our special operations, beginning with Vietnam, well, beginning before that, but that's why they developed the abilities. That's why they were special. The ability to think and work outside the box, to use some imagination. Where does that thing come from? I don't know. Adapt and overcome. Adapt and overcome. A lot of people like to say that and wear that T-shirt. Well, that's just a militaristic, a way to say, use your imagination and go with it. So that was it. You don't need military training, and in many cases a traditional military or police training will inhibit you from delving out into areas that would be far more beneficial to you in whatever you need to do. So anyway, that was a long answer to a short question, but as I've often said, short answers rarely cover the topic. And that's when I answer a question, when I cover a topic, I like to do it in ways that kind of explain the what's and the whys and the wheres and how did we get here's and what to do nows. So anyway, there you have it. I hope that answered your question, Ian, and I hope that was interesting and beneficial to the rest of you all. Remember that you can get the books down below. And also you can get the link to come over and join us on the Patreon level. You get a lot over there you don't get here on YouTube, and we'd love to have you. It only costs you $1 a month, and if you want the upper level that gives you direct access to me, it's a Stonemont level, and it's just $5 a month, and that's really working out great. It's great to have you Stonemonters over there. The books, like I say, are available on Amazon in paperback or Kindle, and you can get autographed copies from me, and the address on how to do that is down below, as is the way to get T-shirts. Oh, yes, you just selling all this? Well, I do a lot of things, and these are businesses of mine. I'm in the preparedness business. I think that'll do it for today. Remember that we prepare well today in order to live well tomorrow. And you're going to live as well tomorrow as you prepare for today. So keep that in mind. Think about these things. Develop your own way. Learn, because you can't learn too much. Study, read, listen to people who know what they're talking about, and you'll get all the training you need in that sense. So you all have a good day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.